How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be talking about my complete Hellraiser DVD collection. Now, these are just the DVDs. These are the copies that I watched when I went through and I watched all the sequels. There are some pretty crazy Blu-ray editions out now, especially for the first two, but this is just a DVD collection, and even though there are 10 films, there's only 4 things here thanks to multi-packs, so this one has 2, and then there's that 6 film set later on. But I wanted to go ahead and talk about these really quick. I did a review for the new Candyman movie recently, and in the introduction to that review, I talked about how later on, when slashers became supernatural slashers, that let Clive Barker come in and introduce his 2 slasher characters to the mix. First you had Pinhead there, and then later on you would get Candyman, and those 2 are some really great classic characters. And just talking about that in the intro to that video got me really thinking about how much fun I had with the old Hellraiser series, and I thought I really need to do this. Before we dive in, I do have Pinhead here on the set, and I just wanted to show you guys Pinhead really quick. This is from that, I think it's called the Toonie Tears line. Basically, little cartoon versions of all the classic horror icons, and kind of like if they had appeared on Scooby-Doo, but this one I actually got from my cousin. He gave it to me for Christmas because me and my cousin actually binged watched all the Hellraiser movies together. It was this thing where we would see each other on 4th of July and watch a couple of the Hellraiser sequels, and we actually got through the whole series that way, and it was really fun times, so that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into the movies. I'm going to try not to be doing any major spoilers, but I do want to say my piece on a few plot points and make sure you guys have a basic understanding as to what the movie's about. Now, there is a chance, especially with Hellraiser 2, where describing the plot might reveal a bit of the previous movies. I'm going to try to keep that to minimal, but just describing plots of sequels, I might inadvertently talk a little bit about the previous movies, but I'm going to try to reduce that. But anyway, I'm going to show you guys all the movies and do a little mini review for each one. And we start off, I have this double pack here. Clive Barker's Hellraiser 2-disc set includes Hellbound: Hellraiser 2, and you get the famous poster of Pinhead holding the box. Oh, this looks kind of like a photographic recreation of that poster. I'm not entirely sure. You get the Hellraiser / Hellraiser 2 on the side. It's from Anchor Bay. Made a lot of horror movies. Anchor Bay put them out crazy. Anyway, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, and then Hellbound Hellraiser 2, which still has Clive Barker's in front of it, even though he didn't really direct this one, from a story by Clive Barker. But let's go ahead and open this up. We have the disc for Hellraiser 1, and then flip over, and the disc for Hellbound: Hellraiser 2. But one thing I find interesting is the chapter index sheet with the little mini posters on the back. Outside of this release, I've never seen this poster for Hellraiser before. I'm guessing that's supposed to be Uncle Frank peering in behind the door. But, Hellraiser, there are no limits. And then the famous quote from Stephen King, "I have seen the future of horror fiction, and his name is Clive Barker." Stephen King was a huge Clive Barker fan, and yeah, it's pretty easy to see why. The poster for Hellraiser 2 is just a picture poster. "They will tear your soul apart again." Clive Barker's Hellbound Hellraiser 2, the horror continues. This time directed by Tony Randall instead of Clive Barker. But let's talk a little bit about each of these movies. The first Hellraiser, obviously a gold star classic. Basically, you get Uncle Frank. He's bored with the pleasures of Earth, tracks down this special puzzle box, and accidentally summons Pinhead, who kills him. Later on, Julia discovers that if she sacrifices men, she can use their blood to bring Frank back, and she's secretly had an affair with him, so she wants to do that. Frank is married to this guy who has a daughter, Kirsty, who will eventually figure this thing out and become a pretty good final girl. Kirsty's the main girl. She has to figure out how to stop Uncle Frank and stop Pinhead, so kind of a dual antagonist there. And it's really fun and crazy. Pinhead's the leader of the Cenobites, and he has a really cool, crazy design, but all the other Cenobites have all these other crazy, weird Clive Barker designs as well. And that's one of the biggest differences from the book, is the Pinhead, the Cenobites all look relatively the same, and it's just Pinhead who has the jeweled pins in his head. But here they decided, what if they're all different monsters, and they really did some great, Clive Barker style designs for each one. The book actually, he wanted to make the movie, and he wrote the book when there wasn't enough interest. So he wrote the book to make the movie, and in turn, the book's actually pretty short, because, a lot of times when you write books, you have to cut out a ton to be in a movie. But the book's actually written to be a movie, and in turn, the pacing is very similar to a movie. If you haven't read too much horror fiction, that's a great place to start. It's great and short and Clive Barker. But there are other differences, and, in particular, Kirsty is a friend of the main guy and not his daughter, and there's a few other things too, but it's relatively similar, especially how much other books get changed when they become movies. But definitely check out Hellbound Heart. Hellbound, Hellraiser 2, so getting a little bit of the book's title back in there. Kirsty's in an asylum after the events of the first movie, and she's there. There's this other girl there who's really, really smart, and it turns out the head of the asylum is evil and trying to use the two of them to figure out how to summon Pinhead, because he wants power and stuff. And this girl's, she's like a genius, so the director can use her to figure out how to open the box. This also features an extended sequence in Hell, which is this really crazy cool MC Escher place. And of course, more different Cenobites. Each movie's going to have its own Cenobites. Pinhead will stay around, Chatter's in a lot of them, but each movie pretty much has their own Cenobites, which is really, really cool. You do also get a reoccurring villain from the first movie, and Kirsty is also looking to get into hell because she's trying to save someone who died in the first movie. But that being said, I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to spoil Hellraiser 1 for those of you guys who haven't seen it. But definitely, the first two are pretty good. Hellraiser 1's a classic. Hellraiser 2 is a little bit of a step down as far as story, but then you get that crazy version of hell at the end, which really does make the movie. Now, 1 and 2, it's kind of weird. The first 8 Hellraisers are definitely in 2 big blocks of 4, the theatrical 4 and the direct-to-DVD next 4, and then but it's also weird because they're also kind of in these sets of 2, where the first 2 are classics, and then you get 3 and 4, which are another step down, and then 5 and 6 are kind of together, and then 7 and 8, but I ramble. But anyway, up next, the rest of the, most of the rest of the sequels, the Hellraiser Collection, the 6-film set, Miramax Classics with Pinhead's face on there. Now, I got this a bit ago. This is a pretty old set, but that being said, I still see it at Walmart, so they're still selling this thing despite how old it's been, so they really have sold this thing for quite a while. But anyway, you get Hellraiser 3, 4, which is Bloodline, 5 is Inferno, Hellseeker, Deader, and Hellworld. And if we open it up, we can see one thing really quick. We have a double-sided flipper disc that has, 3 and 4, and then 5 is on the back. and then this one has 6, 7, and 8. So they're kind of crowded on there. In fact, I don't even think this DVD has any subtitles, so it's pretty bare bones. It's not horrible resolution, but it is, 3 movies crammed on that back disc there. And I think I really want to upgrade at least 3 and 4, because 3 and 4 are still pretty good, but the rest of them, this is probably an okay way to buy them. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about each movie. Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, I felt was pretty good. The way the last one ended, Pinhead was, no major spoilers, but he's trapped in this pillar, and a TV reporter discovers the box, and it turns into this whole, Pinhead destroying a nightclub and stuff, and you do get, a cameraman gets turned into a Cenobite and has a camera shoved in his face, and you do get, a DJ gets turned into a Cenobite and can, take CDs out and throw them and stuff. It's kind of a wackier one, and I do especially love the wacky way it ends. But this one, a lot of times when you see Pinhead merchandise, like the Funko Pops and stuff, it'll say Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth, because this is the first time Pinhead was the main villain of the series, and not, Uncle Frank and Aunt Julia. So, or just Julia. But, no, wait, I'm forgetting their relation. But anyway, it's a little goofier and wacky, but I still really like it, and the new designs are pretty cool. You don't have Kirsty around, but that's, it's still a pretty good one. And then Hellraiser Bloodline, directed by Alan Smithy. Well, not really. This one has a incredibly troubled production, but the director asked that he have his name taken off, and that's why it says Alan Smithy. That's kind of just whenever directors don't like their work and don't want to be credited, they use that alias. But basically the studio and him were fighting, and then he found out the studio was shooting additional scenes behind his back. Crazy stuff. But that being said, the movie's still pretty good despite all the wackiness behind the set. I really do like it. This movie has got a really fun concept. It follows the guy who made the puzzle box way back in time, and then we jump through time. It's the same actor each time playing all his different descendants until we get all the way to the future even. And that was, I thought, a pretty cool concept. This guy jumping through time as all his different ancestors. And then you get Pinhead, who's, of course, immortal, and he'll be jumping through time with them. And then there's this other female demon, and it does, it opens and closes in space, so, Hellraiser in space. If you do also want more Hellraiser in space, definitely check out Event Horizon. Very similar concept. But then we get Hellraiser Inferno. You see, after the trouble that was Hellraiser 4, and it didn't make as much money, these guys went direct to DVD. And also, a lot of them, I think maybe even all these 4, were different scripts that turned into Hellraiser movies. Like, someone just wrote a horror movie, and then they wrote Pinhead into that movie. So, he's less involved, and sometimes you can actually, pretty much see him being inserted into these movies. But Inferno there, they also all have pretty heavy influence from Jacob's Ladder, but Inferno, you're following this crooked cop, and he has to solve this mystery. There's this mysterious serial killer known as the Engineer, and the Engineer was another Cenobite taken from the novel, but is not in any way like his portrayal here. But you get the crooked cop pulling scumbag things, and he finds the Cenobite. And yeah, very Jacob's Ladder. You get to Hellseeker, and this movie is a lot like Inferno, but instead the protagonist is not a cop this time around, and he's a suspect. So it's a little different there, but the style is very similar to Inferno. But Hellseeker is the one that brought back Kirsty, the protagonist of the first 2 movies, and it's good to see her back, but she is so incredibly underutilized in this movie. pretty much just a little bit at the beginning and the end, and then a few flashbacks. Like, you market this as the one where Kirsty finally comes back, yet you barely use her. So that was ultimately disappointing, and it just seems like a worse version of Inferno with a little bit of Kirsty, but really underutilized, but not terrible. Again, another Jacob's Ladder style movie, and if you haven't seen Jacob's Ladder, go watch that one as well. So watch Event Horizon, watch Jacob's Ladder, and I'll get to another recommendation in a minute. But anyway, after that, we have Hellraiser Deader, and this is one that I kind of, I watched it with my cousin, and then later I asked him, do you have any idea what Deader was about? And he's like, I have no idea what was going on in that movie. And that is really the truth when it comes to Deader. It's something about this reporter who finds a cult, and the cult is finding ways to live forever, like they'll die but come back and stuff. And for some reason they need the puzzle box. Overall, this movie's just really rambling and all over the place, and not the biggest fan of this one, just because man, what was going on? Like, I don't know, it's still an inside joke with me and my cousin that what was going on in Deader, something cult, something, I don't know, maybe if I give it another rewatch, I can figure it out. But anyway, after that we have Hellraiser Hellworld, and I have to say, out of all the premises, this is really disappointing in its execution. Hellworld is a video game in this movie based on the Hellraiser series. You know, people don't know that it's real events. They think it's just a video game. And a bunch of people, if you solve this special puzzle, get invited to a Hellraiser-themed party in real life. So a bunch of people go there. You even got Henry Cavill, who would go on to play Superman, is a character in this movie. And the thing with this is you say Hellraiser, but it's a video game. That inspires a lot of cool ideas. But the thing is, you don't ever really get to see the video game. You get to see the digital puzzle box, which is like a little flash game that they use to open the invitation, but you don't see the video game. Like, there's a movie, Stay Alive, with Frankie Muniz in it, which isn't a great movie. It's pretty fun, but not a great movie. But there they actually do run around this haunted video game, and I thought it was an interesting concept, and that's much more what I thought this movie would be. But the video game stuff hardly comes into play, and they go to the party, and it's just a bunch of people partying. Like, you think there'd be, like, Hellraiser meta references, like something from Scream, and those aren't there either. And then there's a twist at the end that makes, like, no sense. You know, no spoilers, but it's like, I don't think that would work the way you think it would. So those are most of the Hellraiser sequels. But then we had the two modern ones. These are the ones without Doug Bradley. So Doug Bradley, towards the end of the sequels, big fights, and he didn't come back. And he is sorely missed because no one plays Pinhead as well as Doug Bradley. And then you get Dimension Extreme coming out with Hellraiser Revolutions with not Doug Bradley as Pinhead. And this movie, to be honest, you know, I don't think it's the absolute worst of the sequels. But yeah, Doug Bradley is sorely missed. But you basically get these two teenagers. They were exploring the world. They come across the puzzle box, and one of them eventually makes it back, and there's like found footage segments of what they were doing in the past. But then his family eventually becomes prey to Pinhead, and you can tell the budget's down because it's primarily just people in this one house trying to survive Pinhead. And yeah, seeing them, you know, it's a Hellraiser movie, but it's really more like a low-budget slasher with, you know, Pinhead trying to get in this one house. It's, you know, an isolated, you know, kind of home invasion movie, but with Pinhead, which is kind of weird. And then, like, a solid, 20% of it is found footage, Overall, not that great, but they did in this movie try to do a lot of stuff from the first one. And, the first one's a good movie, and, getting to see like little bits of it, I'm like, oh hey, that's kind of cool, because it was cool in the first one, but then again, it's not original. But it's like, okay, I recognize that imagery, that's fine, it's a duplicate, but it's better than the rest of this low budget movie. Overall, Revelations wasn't that great. It wasn't terrible, but yeah, it's low budget, non-Doug Bradley Pinhead in a home invasion / found footage movie. Not that great. Now, the surprising one, Hellraiser Judgement, the 10th entry in the series. You still don't have Doug Bradley back, but they did something kind of smart with this one, is they decided to focus on a different Cenobite. You get this Cenobite called the Auditor, and the Auditor will sort of, when people discover him, he audits them. He goes and he analyzes their life, spits it out all on paper. He has several other Cenobites working below him. One of them eats the paper and figures out what you're doing, But yeah, it's kind of like Hellraiser 5, where there's these detectives trying to figure it out. But yeah, there's the Auditor there, and basically, hey, we can't get Doug Bradley back. What if we made this new Hellraiser movie focus primarily on a different Cenobite, and then in turn you don't get as much with Pinhead, but the Auditor is a really cool different character, and it's not as good as the first two, but surprisingly not really that bad at all. And hey, the new Cenobite's fun, puts it in a different way, and this time, it's still not Doug Bradley, but the second new Pinhead I think is a little better. But anyway, that's the Hellraiser movies. I hope I didn't ramble too long. It wasn't as visually interesting because most of them are in this one pack, but overall, a pretty good series. Basically, the first two, definitely recommend. 3 and 4 are a step down, but I still think they're pretty fun. The next 4, kind of, Jacob's Ladder knockoffs. You can tell Pinhead wasn't originally in them. And then, like, Hellworld was definitely a disappointing way to do that concept. And then the last 2, the non-Doug Bradley ones, this is just, a very so-so low-budget movie. But you get to this one, actually probably worth checking out. Sadly, it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I don't think they're going to resolve it. Well, that being said, Clive Barker, I believe, got the rights to his series back, so the new movies are definitely going to be better, but I still wonder what happened at the end of this one. Whatever. But anyway, that's the Hellraiser collection. To everyone who's watched so far and listened to me ramble about all these movies, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You're really helping the channel out. I'll put a relevant playlist on the bottom. It should be my complete collections videos. I have Child's Play, Return of the Living Dead, Conjuring, Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So if you want to see my other complete collections, they'll be right in there. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Relevant playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.